Bonjour les amis, dans cette vidéo, nous allons apprendre la formation du subjonctif. Alors, vous allez remplir les notes de l'unité 2, grammaire 1, partie 1. Nous allons apprendre la formation du subjonctif et je vais commencer à partager mon écran. Voilà. Alors, le titre de l'unité, c'est le subjonctif. Le subjonctif. Nous allons apprendre, c'est quoi le subjonctif? C'est quoi le subjonctif? What is the subjunctive? J'ai ici quelques exemples. Il faut que je fasse mes devoirs. What could this sentence mean? It's important, or I must, or I have to do my homework. Regardons cet autre exemple ici. Il faut que je parle avec ma grand-mère. I have to talk to my grandma. So, dans cette vidéo, nous allons apprendre how to construct the subjunctive, what is the subjunctive, and how do we form the subjunctive. Voilà les questions essentielles de cette unité 2. Voilà. What types of obligations do we feel towards our household, our society, and towards our own personal goals? And how can one express obligation and opinion without using the personal pronouns I, as in I think that and I want you to? So we started some of these answering some of these essential questions in other videos. Today we will continue with we will focus on the second essential question. Et voilà les cibles d'apprentissage. Je peux utiliser le subjonctif pour communiquer une obligation et je peux utiliser le subjonctif avec les verbes réguliers et il faut que. Et nous allons apprendre ce que veut dire ces phrases-là. Let's talk about verbs in general. When we use verbs, we use them in a certain tense, in a certain mood. There are two things we've been talking so far about tenses, but now we're going to learn that there are also some moods when we talk about verbs. What is a tense? The tense of a verb indicates when the action takes place. For instance, we have the present, the passé composé, and the imperfect, as well as the future tense. All these are tenses that express or indicate when the action takes place. Now, the mood, however, reflects the attitude of the speaker or the subject towards the action. We will see, of course, examples about all these ideas. The indicative and the subjunctive are moods. The indicative mood is objective, while the subjunctive mood is subjective. So we said the indicative mood is objective because it's used to describe facts. It states what is considered to be certain. It is the mood of what is. So whenever we are certain about the facts in a sentence, we use the indicative mood. The subjunctive mood is subjective. It's used to express feelings, judgments, and emotions relating to an action. The subjunctive is subjective because it states what's considered to be desirable, possible, doubtful, or uncertain. It's the mood of what may or might be. Okay, let's see some more explanations. So although the subjunctive is not very frequently used in English, it's a mood very frequently used in French. Compare the mood of the following sentences. Here is the fact. We said we use the indicative mood for the facts, and wish. And what mood did we say we use for the wishes? It's the subjunctive. Okay, let's start with the fact. Je sais que tu es généreux. So here, in all these sentences, we are using the verb to be. Être, je suis, tu es, il est. Je suis, tu es. So here we have tu es. Je sais, I know for a fact. So there's a fact. Je sais que tu es généreux. I know that you are generous. Compare it to the wish. Je souhaite, I wish, que tu sois plus patient avec moi. I wish that you were more patient with me. So tu sois is the verb to be still, but instead of saying être, tu es, which is the present indicative, we use this present of the subjunctive of être. So you see the difference? Like just as in English, I know that you are generous. I wish that you were. Je sais que tu es. Je souhaite que tu sois. So the subjunctive is used most frequently in dependent clauses that are preceded by que. There are circumstances when the subjunctive will be preceded by qui, but we'll get to that later. So que means that, qui means who. For now, let's remember that you have to have que to have a subjunctive. But not every que requires the use of the subjunctive. Compare. Je suis fâché que Marie ait plus d'amis que moi. I am angry that Mary has more friends than me. So has here, it's the verb avoir in the subjunctive form. Je suis fâché. So here we have emotions, right? Sentence 2, Marie a plus d'amis parce qu'elle est plus gentille que moi. Marie has more friends because she is nicer than me. So what do we have in the first sentence? We have je suis fâché que Marie est plus d'amis que moi. So here we have the subjunctive. So not every que, like in this case, is followed by a subjunctive, but we have to have que in order to have the subjunctive. Why didn't we use here the subjunctive, but we use the indicative present tense instead? Because Marie a plus d'amis. So we know for a fact that Marie has more friends. So here it's a fact, not subjunctive, indicative. Here we have feelings, fâché, angry. So we use the subjunctive. So the subjunctive is weird, okay? Weird. And we're gonna use an acronym to remember when to use the subjunctive. So remember which expressions require the subjunctive by thinking of weirdos. And here I have a chart for you that you can pause and review at your leisure. When do we use the subjunctive? The W is for wishes. J'aimerais que, I would love that. Or je voudrais que, I would like to. Je souhaite que, I hope that. So after this expression, you'll have to have the subjunctive. Here, the E is for emotions. Je suis triste que, j'ai peur que, je suis surpris or surprise que. The I is for impersonal expressions of obligation. Il faut que, it's necessary that. Il est important que, it's important that. Il est nécessaire que, it's necessary that. The R is for relative clauses, which means any sentence that comes after qui. In this case, qui is one of the starters of the relative clauses. Nous cherchons un secrétaire qui sache taper. We are looking for a secretary who knows how to type. So sache, it's the subjunctive of savoir. We don't say qui sait taper, we say qui sache. Doubts, so these stands for doubts, I'm sorry. Je doute que, je ne pense pas que, je ne crois pas que, I doubt that, I don't think that. So pense and croire are kind of synonyms. O is for orders. J'exige que, I require that. J'ordonne que, I order that. Or je commande que, I command that. The S also stands for superlatif or superlatives. c'est le meilleur restaurant que je connaisse. This is the best restaurant that I know. So je connais is the subjunctive of connaître because it followed the superlative le meilleur que. So here are some more examples of the subjunctives, and then we'll talk about how to form the subjunctive. What is the subjunctive? More examples. Let's look at this. It's extra explanations that you might not find in the lesson notes that you will be filling out. D'accord? So here are the lesson notes that you will be filling out. This slide that I'm covering now might not be in the slides. The subjunctive or in the lesson notes, but you'll need to understand it, okay? It will be very helpful. It's a specific verb form or mood. It usually expresses something that you wish for or a hypothetical rather than actual situation. If only I were 10 years old. So here there's a hypothetical situation or a wish, right? I only wish that what you say were true. So here we have the subjunctive. We didn't say was, or so we didn't use the present. We used the indicative present. We used the present of the subjunctive, were. It's also used to indicate that something is being suggested or demanded. The report recommends that he face the tribunal. So here we have a suggestion, right? It's important that they be aware of the provisions of the act, that they be. It's important that they be. So here we have a demand, okay? It was suggested that he wait until the next morning. So here we have, it was suggested that, we have that clause, which is en français que. And let's look at the final one. It was suggested that he could wait until the next morning, could be replaced by should plus infinitive, okay? So instead of having the subjunctive, sometimes we used the should plus infinitive. Voila. Let's move on. So here we have the subjunctive. Here we have the indicative mood. I wish versus I know. I wish that it were true. I know that it is true. So here is the subjunction. Now, how do we form the subjunctive? La formation du subjonctif. The sentences below express a necessity, and here you can start filling out your lesson notes. So they express the necessity or obligation. In sentences of this type, the French use a verb form called the subjunctive. Here are right away some examples. Il faut que je finisse mon travail. Faut is the verb falloir, And the verb falloir is conjugated only with the pronoun il. So we don't say je faut, tu faut, il faut. It's only with il, okay? Il faut, which means literally it's a necessity that, or it's a must that, or to translate it more accurately, we say, I have to finish my work. Il faut que vous aidiez vos parents. You have to help your parents. So these verbs are in the subjunctive because they follow il faut. So here is the formula. The subjunctive is a verb form that occurs frequently in French. It's used after certain verbs and expressions in this construction. Expression, plus que, plus sujet, plus subjonctif, like so. Il faut que Marc tonde la pelouse. Mark has to mow the lawn or cut the grass. The subjunctive is almost always introduced by que. D'accord? Maintenant, que signifie le verbe falloir? Comment il est conjugué? What is the verb falloir? I mentioned that you only conjugate it with il. So the verb falloir signifie être l'objet d'un besoin, to be the object of a need, d'une nécessité, of a necessity, ou d'une obligation. C'est un verbe impersonnel. It's an impersonal verb, which means what? Le sujet est toujours, always, est toujours il. Ce sujet ne désigne ni un objet, ni une personne. This subject does not replace or indicate a specific object or person, Au présent de l'indicatif, in the present of the indicative, we say il faut plus que plus subject plus verb. Okay? For all regular verbs and many irregular verbs, the subjunctive is formed as follows. So here is the construction part. We need the subjunctive stem plus subjunctive ending. Now, how do we make the subjunctive stem? How do we create it? Do we construct it? We start with il in the plural plus il, form of the present tense, present conjugation, minus ent, minus ent. So il, form of the present, minus ent. And then we add, so here we have the stem, then we add es, ions, iez, ent. So we're looking at the present subjunctive of parler, finir, attendre, to speak, to finish, and to wait. We start with the il form of the present tense, parle, ent, finisse, ent, attende, ent, like il parle, il avec s finisse, il avec s attende. And then we drop the ent, and here we go. What's left here in red is the present, is the stem of the subjunctive. So here is the stem, parle, 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 finisse, finisse, and so forth, attende, 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 and so forth. And then we add es, or ions, iez, ent. It does maybe resemble a little bit the imperfect in this area here, and in this area for nous and the vous, but we should know it's the subjunctive because the subject is always preceded by que. Que je parle, que tu parles, qu'il parle, qu'elle parle. I'm going to continue here. Que nous finissions, que vous finissiez, qu'il et qu'elle finissent. Que j'attende, que tu attendes, qu'il attende, que nous attendions, que vous attendiez, qu'ils attendent et qu'elles attendent. Now, together we'll do this activity to conjugate the subjunctive, the following verbs in the subjunctive form: écouter, grandir, vendre, et dire. So we have to look for the plural form of écouter in the present tense. Ils écoutent, ent, and we drop the ent. Grandir, ils grandissent, iss, ent, and then we drop the ent and we add the ending. How do we construct the verbs, the subjunctive of the verbs that end with YER, like balayer, to sweep, and nettoyer, to clean? So we have, we start with the present tense, right? The indicative present tense, j'essuie, tu essuies, il essuie, nous essuyons, vous essuyez, ils essuient. So we have essuie here. We start with the il et elle form, and we drop the ent, and we end with the stem ess, ui. Okay, and then we add es, ions, iez, ient. But for nous and vous, we keep the y. Que j'essuie, que tu essuies, qu'il essuie, qu'elle essuie, que nous essuyions, que vous essuyez, qu'il et qu'elle essuie. So here's the chart in another form. Here we go. We have the infinitive, the present, the present stem and the subjunctive. The present stem of il, for instance. And we have the ending, the subjunctive ending. So here we have parler, finir, vendre, et dire. Dire is to say, right? And then we start with il in the present tense, and we conjugate. How do we conjugate il in the present tense with parler? Il parle, ent, and then we drop the ent. Same thing for finisse, for vendre, and dire. And then we add the ending es, ions, eoz, ent, pardon, and we'll end up with the subjunctive conjugation of these verbs. Voyons, let me do the vendre with you. Que je vende, if I'm conjugating in the subjunctive, que je vende, que tu vendes, est-ce qu'ils vendent, que nous vendions, ions, que vous vendiez, iez, qu'ils et qu'elles vendent, ent. So you are welcome to pause at this time and fill out your lesson notes and practice pronouncing this conjugation and make it as a rhythm that you can memorize and pull from memory when you need to do an activity or speak or write. Dis Julien, il faut que tu arroses la pelouse. Hey Julien, you must water the grass. Oui, mais il ne faut pas que tu arroses mon chat. Yes, but you shouldn't water my cat. So here we have two subjunctives. Now, comment exprimer une obligation personnelle? How do we express a personal obligation using the subjunctive? L'usage de subjonctif après il faut que. So we're gonna examine the usage of the subjunctive after il faut que. Note the use of the subjunctive in the following sentence. Il faut que je parte. I must leave, right? I have to leave. Il faut que vous travailliez. You have to or you must work. So to express what people have to or must do, use the construction il faut que plus subjunctive. If you forgot what il faut que means, literally, go back to the previous slides, review the video, rewind, and watch again. D'accord? L'usage du subjonctif après il faut que, so we continue with this idea. Here is a personal obligation. The personal obligations can also be expressed with devoir plus infinitive. Je dois partir. I must leave, but here we have verb 1 and verb 2. The verb 1 is conjugated in the present tense and the verb 2 is in the infinitive. We do not have a subjunctive here. Note that il faut plus infinitive is used to express a general obligation, d'accord? A general obligation. Il faut étudier. One has to or one should study. Or you, people in general, have to study. Il faut. Voilà some expressions. Voilà des expressions avec il faut. Il faut savoir dire non. One should know how to say no. Il ne faut pas toujours tourner la page. Il faut parfois changer de livre. Ou, il ne faut pas toujours tourner la page. One shouldn't always turn the page. Il faut parfois changer de livre. One should sometimes change the book. Okay, we continue with l'usage du subjonctif après il faut que. The negative, il ne faut pas que plus subjonctif or subjunctive expresses a prohibition or interdiction. It means you do not allow someone to do something, right? Prohibition or interdiction. Il ne faut pas que tu dormes en classe. You should not sleep in class. So we put ne and pas around faut. Il ne faut pas que tu dormes en classe. D'accord? Allons plus loin. Let's go a little further. Here are some expressions that use the subjunctive and they translate all of them to you don't have to leave. Here's one way. Il n'est pas nécessaire que tu leaves. Que tu partes, pardon. Il n'est pas nécessaire que tu partes. Tu n'es pas obligé de partir. So the first one does have the subjunctive. The second does not. Tu n'es pas obligé. You are not obliged to leave. Tu n'as pas besoin de partir. You do not need to leave. Tu n'as pas à partir. You don't have to leave. So the first one only uses the subjunctive because we have que and il n'est pas nécessaire que. Maintenant, let's continue. Je peux former le subjonctif avec les verbes irréguliers, simples et les verbes à deux radicaux. What does this mean? Let's learn. Some verbs like venir have different stems in the il and nous forms of the present. Verbs of this type have two stems in the subjunctive. So since they have different stems in the il and nous forms of the present tense, they have two stems in the subjunctives. subjunctive, pardon. Note that the following verbs all have regular subjunctive endings. So they keep the subjunctive endings. Okay, here we go. In the present, we have ils viennent, double N-E-N-T, and nous venons, right? Je viens, tu viens, il vient, nous venons, vous venez, ils viennent. So here we have the issue of having two different stems. So the subjunctive kind of maintains these stems. Que je vienne, que tu viennes, qu'il vienne. And the il and elle form in the plural is also ils viennent, right? So the il of the present translates to je, tu, il, elle, on, and il and elle in the plural, while the nous form venons is retained for nous and vous in the subjunctive. Que nous venions, que vous veniez, one N. So it is stem changing. So, que je vienne, que tu viennes, qu'il vienne, que nous venions, que vous veniez, qu'il vienne. Il faut que, here are some other verbs. Acheter, j'achète, nous achetions. Espérer, il faut que j'espère et que il faut que nous espérions. Appeler, il faut que j'appelle et il faut que nous appelions. So, the same idea we saw here in this slide is applied in this slide. All these are stem changing verbs. J'appelle, que j'appelle et que nous appelions. Payer, il faut que je paie, mais il faut que nous payions. Notice the difference in the stems. Boire, que je boive et que nous buvions. Il faut que je voie et que nous voyions. Notice the stem is different. Il faut que je prenne et qu'il faut que nous prenions. So we did already venir. Here is another visual, pardon. Let me focus on the slide. Here we go. Here is another visual of the stem changing verb like acheter. The E changes to E. J'achète. Tu achètes, il achète. Nous achetons, vous achetez, ils achètent. And here is the same information I showed you in this slide in a different way. Here it shows you exactly how does the stem change in payer, for instance, the Y and the I, commencer, the C and the CCD, appeler, one L versus double L, and so forth. So pause and understand, s'il vous plaît. Use the same pattern to form the subjunctive of verbs with spelling and stem change. So here we have the same idea, okay? Acheter, achète, 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 achetions, achetiez, achète. Let's do recevoir, and I'll let you do the rest on your own. Recevoir, to receive, que je reçoive, que tu reçoives, qu'ils reçoivent, que nous recevions, que vous receviez, qu'ils reçoivent. D'accord? So here we come to the end of our vidéo. Nous venons à la fin de notre vidéo. Voilà. J'espère que vous avez bien compris la leçon sur le subjonctif. Si vous n'avez pas bien compris, revoyez, il faut revoir, n'est-ce pas? Il faut revoir la vidéo, regarder les notes et écouter mes explications. Puis, nous allons faire des activités ensemble. Merci beaucoup les amis pour avoir regardé cette vidéo et pour avoir fait attention. Merci et à la vidéo prochaine. Au revoir.